Hi there, thanks so much for tuning in to today's Drawing for Adults class. This class is offered as a partnership between the Ann Arbor Art Center and the Ann Arbor District Library. Today we're going to be using charcoal and paper if you've got vine charcoal or stick regular black charcoal, whatever you have. Charcoal pencils will probably work if you've got kneaded erasers or other kind of erasers. Definitely grab those and get ready. So the first thing I want to talk about is setting up a landscape. So we're going to be drawing this kind of atmospheric charcoal trees, and this will help you get a better grasp on, focusing on those gradations of doing some really light work and transitioning to midtones and then getting into some darker values. So our lightest cut tones will be towards the background and the darker tones will be towards the foreground. So here I'm showing you what are the parts of the landscape. So that horizon line is, where the land meets the sky. The background is the area that's furthest away, and the foreground is down towards the bottom of my paper, and the midground is kind of somewhere in between. So those objects in the foreground, they're like the grass and the flower, they are going to be a lot larger, whereas the objects in the midground are kind of more medium. Now in the background, the colors, you're going to see a lot, we want to take into consideration atmospheric perspective, which tells us that we have colors that are lighter and less detail. Now, of course, or I should say not just colors, but just objects that are lighter and less detailed. We're not going to be working in color today, but it would, if we were, it would also be cooler. So then things that are in the foreground, not only are they larger, but you're also going to see more saturation, more contrast, and more detail. So let's get started. I'm going to start with my light tones in the background. So you can see how I've very, very lightly taken my charcoal, and I'm using kind of like a, equivalent of like a 4B kind of charcoal or so. If you've got your vine charcoal, that's always a good thing to use when you're doing something that's really faint and light like this, because it's just so light. Granted, vine charcoal doesn't always, it erases really easily because it's not the most permanent thing. It's just not very dark. So that little row in the back, you can see, does not have much detail. And I'm still with this row here. I'm still not really putting in that much detail, but I kind of have the impression of branches. So I'm putting a little bit of detail in here, just not a ton, because I want I want to be able to have these trees be recognizable, of course, as trees, but I want them to be different than what's behind them and also different than what's in front of them. Now, if you want to have a little bit more blended look, you can see I'm softening these a little bit. You can grab a soft tissue or something like that, or even like a really soft cotton t-shirt or rag, and just give it a little a little circular or just slightly back and forth kind of motion with some light pressure. So you're not scrubbing at it, you're just slightly blending it. And so that will give you more of that kind of foggy, soft, really atmospheric look, as well as just blending it more together, especially if it's really grainy. If you're thinking that you're getting some really grainy texture, you might be. It really depends on your paper. Some paper has a lot of texture, and other papers are more smooth. So anyway, now you can see here I'm on my, 5th row actually of trees. Notice how I'm getting darker and darker, of course, a little bit more detail as I work my way down, more contrast, and notice how I'm putting these little small trees, like just the little tops of the trees in between some of my other ones, and that just helps it so that they don't look like they're too much in a row. That can sort of be a little too perfect almost, so we want to give it enough variation and rhythm to make it look the most natural. So Here I go now. I'm still doing that blending technique once again, and then now I'm gonna put in my final layer of trees here. So here I'm pressing down significantly harder and I'm adding much more detail. Notice the shapes are still kind of like these really elongated triangles. I usually it helps me to kind of make those tops to be extra long. Okay, so then again, if there's anywhere that you need to add in an extra tree, go ahead and do that. Your eraser can also be your friend when it comes to, bringing in some fog. So you can see here I've erased out different parts that kind of help make it look like the clouds are really low in the trees, which I think is actually a really cool effect. But you might not like that, you might like the way it looked like before. So hope you enjoyed today's video and learned something about value and atmospheric perspective with trees.